Say there ain't no big out in these streets. Refuse to be defeated by enemy. Refuse to be mistreated by these police. Say no peace, ain't 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 no peace. So why me? Lord, tell me why me? I'm just trying to provide for my family. So show me that sign, for I'm so blind, and I won't know it unless you show me outside this grind. Hey, say no peace, ain't 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 no peace.
Good afternoon, folks. This is TJ. This is the UR Law Premium Members webinar conference call for August 20th, 2019. Welcome you all for being here. As you know, we'd like to start off our webinar with a brief prayer for those who wish to join in. So feel free to prepare as you choose. In the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, thank you for all your blessings. Thank you for all the knowledge and wisdom you've given us, and really, frankly, for all the wisdom and knowledge you've given all of this group together, because we know that when we're together, we do form a much more powerful force in your name. And so I just thank you for that, and appreciate your being with us and guiding us, even though sometimes it feels painful. We know that you're always pushing us forward. So for those challenges, I thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Just remind everybody about our legal disclaimers. We are not here to give you legal advice. We do not provide emergency legal services. In spite of the number of times I get asked that every day, just can't do it. It's not physically possible for one person to keep track of all the details of all the cases in all the states and all the counties and all the cities. I don't know any of those laws. I look stuff up, just like you have to. You got to do the work. And so just keep that in mind. We're not here to give legal or tax advice. We might cross into the realm of talking about those things, but also you're free to do it together thanks to our new forum. You can also get in there and have some discussions, as well as our Telegram group, as well as, those are the main forums for you to be able to communicate with one another. Excuse me. So always keep that in mind. Now, before anybody gets in the queue by pressing star 6 to get into the queue for questions, remember, I don't want anybody in the queue yet. All I want is people in there who can start off with some kind of a success story. We will not be taking questions until we get through the success stories. So if you're in the queue, you've queued yourself in, take yourself out until we get to that point. Because it kind of depends on time. We will have time, but we kind of have an order of things. We're going to do things today. And number one is when we get to questions, the first ones in the queue must be success stories. Okay? And then I do have sort of a little lesson I want to get into today, because sometimes, I have to pray and think about, what's going on? What kind of questions am I getting in general? Because I cannot answer all the questions that everyone has, but I try to do my best. I do email people back as long as you keep it concise and to the point. I'm finding a lot of people having a particular challenge. So I'm going to get into that here in a minute. But again, I want to remind you, the reason also that I stress everyone own the How to Win in Court Without a Lawyer course will be supported by what we're going to talk about tonight. But it's just knowing how to handle procedures. Again, a common question I get is, well, what do I do next? Well, again, I'm beginning to give you legal advice. I'm telling you what to do next all the time. But if you have a program, we get ideas that we give. We're kind of an idea source. That course is an optional course, totally optional, but it's the cheapest money you'll ever spend to save yourself attorney time down the road. Less than the cost of 1 hour with an attorney, you'll know how to do what attorneys do. It's not that difficult if you take that course. So it's always recommended. Yes, we want to stay out of court, but we also have to realize we're always in court anyway. Everything you say and do will be used against you. Ever heard of that? You're in court all the time. So you've got to understand that if you get brought to that court situation, how it works. I mean, it's like trying to play a game of chess and not having the faintest idea that it's not checkers. It's just crazy to go there and do that. You're going to lose, and most people do. So it gives you the foundations of procedures and things like that, plus a lot of ideas about what to do next in many situations. So just keep that in mind, and it's really important that you know procedures. We try to give you what we can, but to me it's more of a comprehensive. I mean, there's literally a certificate you can get by taking that course that you should all set the goal to get. Complete the certificate, pass the test. It'll help you immensely in applying a lot of the ideas that we give you. Okay? We try to give you some of the unusual, creative approaches to doing things, but still you have to go through the process yourself. I can't be there. Nobody else can be there for you. The whole point of this entire program is to lift you up and enlighten you as to what you can do. You are the force. I mean, what's falling apart in our country, you want to blame Washington and the Congress and this and that and the other thing? Start blaming yourself. Accept responsibility. That's what this call is going to be about. Now, if you kind of got yourself into a situation, maybe because you got a problem with child support, well, look back. Did you get a state license, bringing them into your life? You didn't have to. If you had a traffic problem and they pulled you over and they, showed them a driver's license, you just kind of told them you want to play in their pool, you want to play in their fund. You want to work for McDonald's Corporation, go sign up to work for McDonald's Corporation, and you will be subject to their rules. So anytime you get a license, a permit, a registration, all those things, and I'm not saying not to get those things. I'm saying if you do, just know you've got some rules to work with. Okay? And you can still win, but you're going to have different challenges than someone who didn't do that. So, for example, if you got married with a private service with some witnesses and you put it in a Bible, or you created a contract that you can record publicly, then that's your contract. Whereas when you go to the state and say, hey, well, instead of filling out my own one-page contract for marriage, I'll get one from the state. And then see how much they get involved in your life. You asked for it. Don't blame them when you ask for a benefit. Okay? So I think what I'm hearing a lot from people lately is there's anger, there's anxiousness, there's fear, all of which are normal. But you know how you overcome it? I'm going to show you a way to overcome it tonight. So I hope you're paying close attention. This is not to get into any one specific kind of legal issue or give you one template for this, give me a template so that when I got pulled over, I was going 95 and a 35. I happened to be, have this in my car and 2 kids. So I need a template that has all that information in it. I mean, come on. You guys got to think your way through this. You have to start at the beginning and address the problem yourselves. Okay? We're here to bring you, we're kind of to teach you how to drink. We will lead you to water and teach you how to drink, not do the drinking for you. Nobody can do that for you. And when it comes to law, if you don't have basic understanding of law, I'm even talking just basic biblical law, even, you don't have a chance. And I don't care whether you believe in the Bible or not, our legal system is built upon those principles, whether you like it or not, and you're in it. Now, you want to go live in a cave and kill water buffalo for dinner and, don't talk to anybody and never ever say anything to anybody or cross anybody's street or go near on somebody's property or go to a restaurant or buy gas or buy groceries. If you want to do all those things, you can avoid contracting. But if you're doing any of those things, you're in contracts all the time. You're in negotiation for contracts all the time. So anyway, that's kind of our basic subject for that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So again, if you're in the queue for a question, make sure you're there for a success story. We'll get to you in a little bit. But let me get over to this because I did make some notes. If you see some typos, it's because I just really finally got this finished right before the call, so I didn't have time to prove too much. But I think you'll get the general idea. So tonight's subject is being a creditor being a creditor and being your, I'm sorry, there you go, there's my first table. Being a creditor and, start over again. Tonight's subject is being a creditor and defending your remittance. Now, what does that mean? Being a creditor versus being a debtor is what we are called to do. And we're in trouble because of a basic understanding that we don't have as to who we are. We're commanded, and this is going to get a little bit into some Bible teaching. It's not to teach you religion, it is to teach you the rules of the game. Okay? So I'm not making an excuse. I have no problem talking about that, but I've always seen the Bible have for a long time as a guide, as a tool to teach us how to live our life. It's not just about, not sinning and not going to heaven. It's about how to live your life and how to use the law to your advantage instead of to your disadvantage. We perish, in the Bible it says, we perish for a lack of knowledge. That's it. Woe unto you lawyers for taking away the keys of knowledge. That's the only time Jesus ever kind of criticized somebody. Because we depend on them to take care of it instead of our own knowledge. Those two verses together tell you a lot. If you have problems, it's because of your lack of knowledge and the way you've handled it, the way you've dealt with it. So tonight I want to talk about when the Bible also talks about being the lender, not the borrower, being the head, not the tail. I don't have all the sayings here. I'm just telling you these are lessons you can get out of the Bible. But primarily what that means is being the creditor, not the debtor. Okay? And if you can get this little exercise down, and we're going to have a little bit of homework for you for next week, if you can get this exercise down, next time you have to deal with the law in any way, you're going to do it differently. I guarantee you. And you're going to find out that this stuff works. It may not work the first time, the second time, but if you stay with it the third time, usually it works. So you have to be patient. So these are the rules of the game for what we're going to talk about here, okay? So let's start with, and I'm using Matthew 5:25 from the King James Version. Now, the King James Version is the one that is closest to the actual written law. That's why we use it. There are many other versions, but some of these new modern versions that try to give you simplistic language actually really alter the meaning of the terms. So King James is the closest to the original text as our law relates to it. I'm not debating what Bible's right. I'm just telling you this is the one from which a lot of this is written. Okay? Matthew 5:25. Agree with thine enemy, with thine adversary quickly, whilst thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. Verily I say unto thee, thou shalt by no means come out thence, till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing. Okay, what is that essentially saying, legally speaking? It means agree or conditionally agree with your adversary quickly. Don't sit there on the side of the road and argue and tell them you're a traveler and I'm a this and I'm a that. Debtors make statements. Creditors agree and make deals from the beginning. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to make a deal with the devil. It means you're setting conditions, okay? So, for example, if you're pulled over, you might be saying, well, can we search the car? And you say, well, sure, you can search the car on the condition that you produce a warrant that's also written in the correct name and correct syntax, structure, parsing, grammar, and so forth. If you can give me that, sure, you can search the car. But if you can't, well, then I guess we don't have an agreement to do so. That changes the tone of the conversation completely, and it puts conditions out there. Why are we saying that kind of stuff right up front? Because you're establishing good faith, and you're also establishing conditions that are reasonable, but they should use your correct name, right? Not the fictional name, but a real name. They should use the correct sentence structure, parsing, syntax, grammar, common communication that you can understand. That's all you're saying. And if you can do that, produce a warrant like that, sure, then you can search. And if you're kind and you're straightforward like that, and you're asking really non-adversarial questions, you are agreeing with a condition. That's called conditional acceptance. You watch what happens. And even if they take you and pull you in, and you keep doing that every time they ask you a question, you kind of throw a little condition in there, that you agree with. Keep agreeing with them. You watch what happens. You may not get delivered to the judge or the officer and cast into prison, jail. If you do that, but if you don't do this, thou shalt by no means come out thence till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing. Paid the uttermost farthing. Now, please understand, it's always about a transaction. Going to jail is a transaction. Being pulled over. Your court starts not when you get to the judge. See, everybody thinks it's when they get to the court. That's a huge mistake to make. It starts when the lights come on, when there's a knock at the door, when somebody asks you a question. It starts right then. The recording starts. Everything you say and do can and will be used against you. They tell you the truth. So instead of being a victim to that, why don't you become the creditor, be the head, not the tail, be the lender, not the borrower, and make your conditional agreement right there. Now, maybe you were speeding. So you know what? Sometimes you have to accept some responsibility for that. Maybe you're not paying your child support, and you frankly should. Maybe you should accept some responsibility for that. But always come with your hat in hand to the degree that you can actually negotiate. Everything is always a negotiation. Going to court, when they speak to you, they yell at you. They say, the judge made me do this, the judge made me do that. I guarantee you he was actually making you offers. But you don't know how to recognize an offer when you hear it. Because you're fighting. You're denying. And you know what? Maybe you need to pay the uttermost farthing before they're going to let you go. Maybe they need to kind of teach you something. Hopefully it's not long term. This is why you've got to memorize this. Okay, so one of the objectives is that everybody memorizes this verse. But also get it. What is it saying? This is telling you how to deal with the law. Okay? You also get to Matthew 18, verses 15 through 16, 17, and 18 also covers this as well. Matthew's full of great legal guidance. How to live, how to manage yourself, and how to manage your legal affairs even. It may not make sense to you right now, but trust me when I tell you, this has been around way longer than you and I. This has been around, these rules probably been around for thousands of years, even before Matthew spoke them. But you're there. These are this is like gravity. This stuff works. And if you can put in context whatever's going on in your life, maybe it's a mortgage lender coming after you and suing you. Maybe you need to just try to, is it worth losing your house over trying to make a legal point? We all know that maybe there's a fraud and there's a phony thing going on. I accept it. But you know what? You also got into it. So maybe you need to try to work something out. My first remedy for a mortgage, by the way, everybody, on a mortgage particularly, not certain other unsecured debts, a little differently, but on a mortgage is figure out how to settle the payments and actually pay it off early and just get rid of it as quickly as you can. Your statistical chances of getting your house, getting it in your hands are way better that way than fighting them in court, statistically speaking. It's not easy to fight them because you're always fighting. Okay? And so it's very, very difficult to do. I'm not saying you not to do it. I'm just weigh the odds. Maybe you should agree and try to settle and then work out a payment plan. But not only pay it off, but pay it off early. Get rid of it. That's what we used to teach back in the early 2000s when I had another program that we did. And it was only focused on just how to accelerate the debt. And it's peaceful. There's no harm in it. It's not that hard to do. A couple of extra payments a year, and you cut it in half. It's not that hard to do once you beat the compound interest curve. I'm just saying there are different ways to handle some of these things. Sometimes you've got a big, huge IRS bill or something that's coming after you. Look, I've tried to fight it, and they've made it very difficult for me, They do for most people. And you might be right. The law actually supports that maybe you didn't even have taxable income. That might be true. But at some point, you might have to work something out. And then going forward, there are things you do to stay out of it. Just don't get yourself into the game. Okay? So sometimes you can't win every battle. One of my best mentors taught me, he says, every game is winnable if you know what game you're playing. A lot of cases are not a winning case. because you're not playing the winning game. You're playing the losing game. You've already got yourself into something. But you have to try to settle your way out. But then going forward, stop getting yourself into these things. So anyway, that's a great lesson from Matthew 5:25. And let's read 5:38. Ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And that's what we all tend to try to do, right? But I say unto you, by the way, this is always Jesus speaking here. You need to know that ye resist not evil, but whoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. And saying, hey, just, if you get yourself into a situation and they smack you, just take it, calm down, and then stay on track. So that if any man will sue thee at the law and take away thy coat, let them have thy cloak also. In other words, don't give your cloak, give them something extra. I know that sounds strange, but these are directions here. And whoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away. That means help your brother. Don't be stingy. Ye have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you. That's right. Do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which disrespectfully use you and persecute you. Boy, folks, that is a hard thing to do, isn't it? But when you do it, you watch what happens in your life. That ye may be the children of our Father which is in heaven. And he maketh the sun to rise in the evil and on the good, and the seventh rain on the just and on the unjust. Let him settle it. Don't you try to fix all your problems in those situations. For if ye love them which love you, that reward have ye. Do not even the publicans, by the way, a publican's a taxpayer, do not even the publicans the same? You know, but you got to love them too. And if ye salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans, the tax collectors, so? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. So in other words, don't engage in these battles. Sometimes you got to just take it a little bit, move on, accept something, and this is a really hard key for a lot of people. But when you get it, and those who have done it will be able to tell me, yes, it works. I assure you. It may not seem like it's working at first. Sometimes you don't know what's going on, as my friend Jack Smith used to say. But it's going on. As long as you're staying on focus, staying on point. Sometimes you have to do it once, twice, or even 3 times to see it actually work. Okay? So whatever you're doing, don't be I saw some emails from people this week where I could just see they're trying 10 different things. They're fighting. I'm like, you're going to court, they don't have no idea what to do. They have no idea what to do. Sometimes I'd say, let's just simplify it. Why are you there? Did you get yourself into something? Why don't you accept it and give them a condition? By the way, when we talk about the correct sentence structure, syntax, parse, response, that's what we're doing. We're accepting and giving conditions. That's all it is. So keep that in mind. So being the creditor. Now what is that? What does that look like? So, first rule is don't argue. Be the creditor, not the arguing debtor. Remember, if you're acting like a debtor, you are a debtor. And ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people don't like to hear this, but there are no papers on the planet that are going to prove that you're a creditor. Now, I don't care if you're an SPC, you filed a UCC1, you wrote a bunch of affidavits, all that. Your outward actions will be judged far greater than just documents. Documents might set up a foundation for an argument, but you're probably going to have to go to court and argue it. So if you're going to put documents in, be prepared to understand what it is you're actually there to do. And you might have to do it verbally. And if you're not ready to stand up and show that you're a creditor, as opposed to just say you're a creditor, then you're not a creditor. Let me say that again. If you're not prepared to show up and show them what a creditor does and acts like, you're just depending on a piece of paper, then you're not a creditor. Now that's something a lot of people don't like to hear. They always ask me, give me the magic template, the one template that's this most bizarre, weird offshoot scenario. Give me a template for that. Well, number one, that doesn't work. Number two, how could I write a template for every scenario? Number three, it misses the point. What is the basic outline actually trying to show you what to do? We're trying not to just argue. We're trying to settle. Always offering to settle. Even if you think you've been wronged. Right out of Matthew 5:25 and 5:38. Just let that, take some responsibility for being where you're at to a certain degree and just see what you can work out. Now, I don't mean always just because the prosecutor offered you a settlement. You can do more than that. But as long as you're doing in a way which you are accepting, conditionally accepting, or asking questions carefully. Doing one of those three things at all times. And I'm talking from the second you're handcuffed to the second you're put into jail, from the second you're offered food. It's just every step of the way. You want to practice this in every word and every utterance out of your mouth. Okay? If they say, hey, we'll let you out in the morning and with no charges, well, would you fight them over that? If you can just kind of get out? That's an acceptance, right? Or maybe you say, well, they pull you over, like I said earlier, they pull you over and they say, well, can we search your car? He says, well, I can let you search my car if you produce a warrant, and that warrant is produced in the proper name and the correct sentence structure, syntax, parse, grammar. If you can just give me that, I'll be happy to do it. Or if you want to sue me, you say, well, I'll accept your suit as long as you can correctly identify me by the correct name and use the correct sentence structure, syntax, parse, grammar, give me a clear set of definitions and so forth. That's what our syntax response does. There's nothing more complicated than that. You can screw it up and still make that point. Everybody's worried about it being perfect all the time. Sometimes you don't have to shoot one arrow to kill a deer. Okay, so just keep it simple what you're trying to do. And if you got to ask questions, ask very careful questions. Not so much questions to try to embarrass them, but simply questions that kind of get them back to your point of, hey, well, I'd be happy to accept if is a conditional acceptance. Okay, you do that 2 or 3 times during an arrest or incarceration. You watch how much faster you get out. Than fighting. You people, you're all corrupt. You're the United States Corporation, and you're the IRS, or you're just all bunch of dirty cops. Hey, most of these people are just people too. They got a job to do. Now I know it's true. The Nazis at Nuremberg also said we were just doing our job, but you still have to, even like the Bible says, you still have to turn the other cheek, and just keep. It's who you are. It's how you act that matters, not who they are in this scenario. They might be violating the rules. You can bring that up later. But right now, and of course build your record if they are, but for now, accept. And say, well, I accept that provided that you just didn't break the rules giving it to me. See? So actually what I want to do is I'm going to have you in the chat room. I want you to type in. Don't do a bunch of chatting and chit-chatting and talking and, hey, hello, how are you, please. Just do what I'm asking you to do so we can go through this. I want you to type in the window a conditional acceptance of something, for whatever scenario it is you might be dealing with. Maybe they're going to, and remember, an offer doesn't say, oh, we hereby offer you this. It's an offer. It might be just something the judge says or a cop says. Roll it out your window. Take that gun out of your mouth. Sit down. Stand up. You don't want to get crazy with that, but just be careful when they're giving you orders. They're actually giving you an order like almost in a restaurant. It's an offer. Always think of it that way. Okay. Remember, remain the borrower, not become the lender, not the borrower. Okay? Let them be the borrower. But what they're trying to do, when we talk about flipping the switch in the trust, expressing the trust, all that, they're trying to switch it around and make you the borrower, the debtor, the defendant, not the lender. But we are the lender. The people formed our Constitution. And it's built on these foundations. The Bible is the background of it, then the Constitution supports it. They are the debtors. They work for us. We're the lender. They're the borrower. But as soon as you start arguing, you just become the defendant, the debtor, and so on and so forth. And if you argue, you're denying an offer. So, no way, you're not going to do that to me. Well, then, guess what? They have a duty to treat you like a debtor. And then you can't question why it is. Accept responsibility for that. And you watch what happens. It's against our general nature. You know, I mean, you look at what's going on back east in Washington. I mean, people are arguing all the time, and no matter what somebody says, there's somebody's slandering somebody else. It's a bunch of debtors back there. They're not acting like creditors. We need to rise above that. We want to fix this system. More of us need to do this. Not wait for them to do something. But when you argue or deny, you're putting the burden of proof on yourself. Stop doing that. You're innocent until proven guilty. They have it written into their law. You're a creditor until proven you're not. And only you can prove you're not. You're innocent until proven guilty. You're a creditor until you stop acting like one. It's your actions that are your key. So, and another thing that's the worst thing to do is total silence. When you're totally silent, that usually means you agree to everything as the debtor, and then you get an attorney. And then the attorney speaks for you. You're totally silent. That is the worst scenario you could begin in any situation that I can think of. Now, I'm not saying attorneys are always bad. Sometimes you need to negotiate to talk to somebody for you in a private setting. When it comes to something that might be heading to court, you know, this is the antithesis of what society is told. Get a good attorney. I say become a creditor, not a debtor, and know how to act that way. And when we're going to give you an exercise, so by tomorrow, if you work on this, 24 hours from now, you'll know how to speak like a creditor in every situation. So get ready. We're going to show you how to do this. So be ready to take notes. So remember, always agree, basically. Accept. Sorry, there's a typo there. Always accept. That means essentially agree. That doesn't mean, okay, go jump off a cliff. I agree. No, it means I accept what you're saying. You're right. I made a mistake. But I didn't do it with any criminal intent. Or I might say, I accept what you say, but on proof of claim that I did it with a criminal intent. I meant no harm. You see, that's conditional acceptance rather than an argument. If your actions actually happened, agree that the action happened. But in law, they have willfulness is required for many things. It means you intended to do it with criminal intent instead of just accidentally doing it. Okay? Always accept responsibility and watch how much more powerfully things will go. You know, instead of sitting in court arguing over a bunch of facts, say, you're right, all those facts happened. But that's not the issue here. See, there's a conditional acceptance to the degree I'm saying, you're right, but. Every time you say, you're right, but, and without, again, making excuses, you're saying, you're correct, I've totally messed up. But your law requires that I actually did it with criminal intent. Where's that evidence? I'll accept that you say I did those things if you can show me the actual criminal intent versus a good faith misunderstanding. And that's actually a very good excuse for innocence, a good faith misunderstanding. They have that built into their laws. It'll be in jury instructions in many cases. So they actually do follow this. You just don't know how to use it to your advantage. So conditionally accept. So agree, that is to accept, conditionally accept, or avoid denying and arguing. As soon as you find yourself saying, oh, I know what the law is about that, you can't do that to me. That's not the way to say it. You can say it a different way, but you've got to say, you're correct, I apologize for my errors, but I did read the law and it seems to say this, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. You see? Totally different tone, totally different way. I mean, your energy you put out is what you're going to get back. That's a law of physics. Okay? Remember, when we agree, they may not deliver you to the judge. That means settle it peacefully out of court. Judges frequently, a lot of court cases will say, did you exhaust all administrative remedies? They're talking about this. If you've heard any of this in court or any situation you're dealing with, you know I'm telling you the truth. They actually have a way of doing things correctly. It's us that don't know how to interact with them. So I'm hoping this lesson will help you. So be careful about what I call canned responses. A lot of people say, they sit there and repeat, they're like a parrot. They say, I conditionally accept upon proof of claim that blah, 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 blah. That's okay at first, but you need to say it in more of a natural way. So think about going to the restaurant and ordering food. They say, well, here's your menu. Well, that's an offer. It's not just giving you a menu. It's an offer for a negotiation. And they say, would you like to order some food? Oh, there's another offer. Well, I conditionally accept if you can make sure you take the tomatoes off that hamburger and if you give me fry sauce with the fries. Can we do that? Yes, we can. Thanks. We now have an accepted agreement. That's what you're doing in court. That's what you're doing with the cops. That's what you're doing with all these situations. You just don't know it. If you don't know the game you're playing, you can't win. It's that simple. It's a simple negotiation. And the more you conditionally accept, the more favorably you'll be treated. You'll be seen in a higher status. That's what a creditor is, someone with a higher status. And no papers, no documents. Maybe you're using a driver's license, so what? How do you act is what's going to override that. Okay? So it always works if you do it earlier and start it early in the process, and you use it in every question and answer session that's going on, whether it's pre-court, whether you're talking to the prosecutor, whether you're dealing with the judge, whether you're talking to the clerk. Every moment you're in court, from the second the lights go on or the knock at the door happens, the court has begun. So begin acting like a creditor. Be upstanding, be confident, turn the other cheek, and ask the questions. You go back and watch. If you want to watch a good movie on this, is The Passion of the Christ. You watch, if you haven't read that or aspect of the Bible, I just read you some of it. Some of that comes from there. He demonstrates in that movie how he moves around, and the guy wouldn't answer a question. He was a great lawyer. He gave you a parable or a question or a challenge, but never really argued with anybody. He didn't make statements. He'd ask him questions, and he'd give him a parable back, because he was setting up what is the law here all the time. He was a great lawyer. You want to learn a lot? Learn Matthew, and Matthew is full of stuff about the laws. Okay, so keep that in mind. So court starts when the lights go on, or it's a knock on the door. The most thing this is always applies in many situations. You get a letter in the mail. When we do debt collector letters, all we do is we don't argue and say, go away, you dang debt collector, you're a third-party debt collector, and you're a fraud. No, we say, I'd be happy to pay this. That's where debt collector letters say, if you can provide X, Y, and Z. But if you can't, it looks like the law says this over here, so you ought to be aware of that. I just want to give you a fair warning. But we want to work this out, let's work it out. But as soon as you produce that information, we can work it out. You see, it puts you in a whole different position. You just took the position of a creditor by a simple first response. So, here's your exercise. Everybody, I want you to be a creditor for a day. And every interaction you have for a day, just try this. Push yourself all the way through the day. And this is easy. Within 24 hours, you can learn to do this. And next time you go to court, you watch what happens. If you're going to court next week, practice this every day between now and then with real people, just in everyday circumstances. And then when the judge speaks, it'll just come out naturally. Okay? Be a creditor for a day. Now, by the way, I learned this from I praise this guy as my greatest master, my greatest mentor, taught me this. Be a creditor for a day. It took me a long time to get this. And then until I actually did it, and actually, I didn't just sit on this webinar and listen and go, oh, okay, that was great information. Okay, what's for dinner? You at dinner time, pass the peas. Well, I'll pass the peas if you'll also pass me the potatoes. The other people don't even know you're doing it. But you just do it as a point of practice in everyday conversation. What I'm teaching you will teach you to be a greater business person, a greater negotiator, a greater salesperson, a greater father, a greater parent. I'm just telling you, this is powerful information. And you won't just be telling people that you're a creditor, you'll be showing it to them. You want to put a piece of paper in to prove it. You'll walk in there and do it. Okay? They ask you your name. Well, I'm the authorized agent for that name. I've been called that name, but I am the authorized agent for that name. Do you have any problem with that? Maybe ask a question. Try to turn it into a question. Sorry, I don't always do it perfectly. But try to be a creditor for a day. Every single thing that comes out of your mouth for the next 24 hours should be an acceptance or a conditional acceptance. Or maybe a question. Do you want to pass me the potatoes? Sure. Hey, that's an acceptance. Perfectly harmless. I'll pass you potatoes if you also give me a fork or pass me the salt. Just do it, and people around you won't know you're doing it. But you know what? You find what happens is people start actually liking you more. I don't know what it is. It's just sort of a psychological game. But just do it. Okay? So do the day as a creditor until it's second nature. Before you go to court, practice this. You just start doing. You have to do it out loud. You have to practice. You can't just do it in your mind. You got to speak the words. Okay, if you're going to the grocery store, buying gas, can I fill it up for you, sir? Sure. And if you wouldn't mind, can you get the window for me? That's a conditional acceptance. It's that simple. All right. So and then as scenarios come up in court, we'll practice that too. But the goal is to stay out of court. But if you are in court, this is a biggie. You're there not necessarily to win, but to build a record and build an agreement. Stop thinking about winning or losing. How do I build an acceptable agreement? Then you won't look at it when the judge turns down your objection. It's normal, but you built a record for appeal. All right? So maybe they do rule on something you don't agree to. Say, well, thank you, Your Honor, but I do object. For the record, and I'd like you to rule on that objection, because if they don't rule, by the way, it's not an objection. Don't forget that. Just by standing there and saying I object like a parrot means nothing. I object, and please rule on my objection. If they don't rule, then you have nothing in the record from which you can appeal. Sometimes people object and they forget that, and guess what? You can't bring it up in an appeal, because you didn't get a ruling where they made an error. Objections are an offer and acceptance, folks. It's not a win or loss. Expect to have objections. Expect to lose objections, but build your record.
All right, peace and love, family. Basically, what's being discussed is the ability to act in a creditor position. A lot of individuals will hear this information. They'll simply articulate it a certain type way. And just so we're clear, we want the listeners to understand that, all right, especially for my notaries. All right, so notaries, hear me clearly. So let me give you the score. You always heard your mom or your parent, your dad and mom, both parents, if you had both, would tell you, you got to know how to act. You got to learn how to act. You must learn how to act in the public. Let me explain what that means from a notarial perspective. Only certain individuals get recognized as acting in a public capacity. Most of these actors are what we call state actors, such as your police officers, your lawyers, your magistrates, your judges. These are all public officials that are referred to as actors. They're acting in a public capacity. Notaries, you also fall into that category as an actor. And you can act in the public, also you can act in the private. So these actors must understand, like an actor has a script, okay? So you have a script that you usually go by. But great actors learn to improvise. They
use improv. They can improvise. So notaries will learn how to improvise when the script is going in a certain degree. You got to understand that commerce is heavily rooted in accounting. Accounting and commerce kind of goes together. If there's accounting happening, commerce is on the other end of it. If there's commerce that's happening, then accounting is on the other end of it. If accounting is being done, then there's commerce that's being done on the other end of it. They're interchangeable. Not actually synonymous, but they're interchangeable. So if you're going to use improvisation, I'm stumbling over words, but you get what I'm saying. If you're going to use improv, then you have to know that when commerce is in motion, accounting is also fluent in its motion. And you have to articulate that through your improv. See, when you're in the public, everything that's being done, a lot of times you'll hear a lot of people talk about processes and how they work and they don't work. And I try to dispel that by bringing notaries into a position where don't try to prove anything, because truth is not up for debate. Simply stick to the rules of commerce and understand that commerce is accounting. So let's get to the accounting. Where's the math? See, in order for the words to have validity, they must be authenticated, and it must be authenticated in a mathematical proportion. Meaning that for every word that's uttered, in order for that word to stand true, it must make sense mathematically. It's a mathematical formula that you must decipher and implement. Now, we perish for the lack of knowledge because we don't understand that that's what's happening in commerce. Then we get into these awkward, exchanges. And this is what you're listening to about becoming an accreditor. You got to understand that the exchanges are just that. You got to use acceptable, or what we call acceptable conditions and acceptances, because a creditor doesn't argue. You accept everything that everybody's saying upon proof of claim that they can, and again, that's simply saying if. You owe us $1 million. Great. I'll give you that $1 million if you can provide this, and this. Now, if you can't, then that also constitutes, I'm just saying, you got to have some conditional acceptances established. And the only way they can get established for most is that this has to be a part of who they are. I'm not going to give you a magic phrase or a template that you got to follow. You know why? Because here's where the pressure comes in. You put more emphasis on your paperwork, and you got to make the paperwork. You make the paperwork look good. It's what you know. It's not what they say. It's what you know. Look, they have the ability to act. They can, let's go here. If you ever seen any of Denzel Washington, if you know who he is, a famous actor. If you've seen any of his work, Denzel's a great actor. He's a great actor. He is an actor. But when the director says cut, Denzel really didn't die. He just acted that way. So we have to understand that it's an act. They're acting. And when they're acting in a certain capacity. So hopefully this information starts to make sense. Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something.
Okay? And if you're conditionally accepting and then they're still trampling on you, who looks better to the appeals court? See? You expect in lower courts to typically lose most situations. But are you really losing if you built a good record? No. You've got an appealable situation. So this is why, again, we get back to maybe the self-help lawsuit course. It teaches you to be prepared for losing so that you can win in appeal. But if you don't build a good record with the right peaceful attitude, you'll lose. But when they see that you can go to appeals and you've got a good record, then sometimes only in those situations do they let you win. Or they give you a better deal. You're negotiating a better deal just by objecting and building a record. But in the end, they may give you something more favorable, especially if you were respectful and good and kind, but you're acting like a creditor. They will treat you like a creditor. That's the rule. It's not your documents you submitted. Way too much dependence on that. Maybe we're guilty of providing you too many documents because you go, well, this document's going to do it, and that document's going to do it. But you know what? If you don't have the creditor mindset, almost none of them will work because you're still going to have to walk in there and deal with it. Like I said, if you're going to say, I want to express the trust, then don't do it until you can explain it to a 6-year-old because you're going to have to, and do it in court. But do it in a way that's accepting, because that's what the bill of complaint is, in a sense. It's almost like an acceptance. So look at it again. So that's how to be a creditor. Now, if you want to put some examples in the chat window, and again, I don't want just a bunch of talk. I want people to give me examples of how you'd say it. I'll just make statements. See, if you're making statements in the chat window, you're not a creditor yet. Okay. Yeah, people are writing a few things. People saying, did you get my plea offer or whatever? Let's see. Let's see. I got to go back to some of these. You guys started this before I got. Hang on. Let me get back. I'd be happy to provide an ID and insurance if you could please provide me with your ID also. Very good. That's a good start. Hang on a second. This chat one, the problem with it is it jumps around on me and I get lost. I have to go back to. It puts me at the end every time I start typing something. I'm on free conference call. Okay, I agree that you might allegedly have standing and will agree if you can present a valid proof of claim, providing jurisdiction to your claim. Okay. Now, if you know what that means, what do you really ask? We don't know what you're asking for, so if they do show it to you, you know what it is. I'd like to acknowledge your claim, but I'd like to ask a few questions. Okay, that's fine. David asks, where are the document links for this webinar? I don't know what you mean. There's no document link. You mean the documents on screen? I'll save that in I'll probably in the reference material section of the site. I'll let you know. This document's brand new. So let's see. Let's see other ways people put it here. I got a lot of comments in here. I don't need any more because every time you put it in, it jumps to my screen and I can't see it anymore. I'll be happy to comply with your order as long as you give me the requested order in writing, as allegedly signed and dated. The payments of services rendered. And I might add, and as long as it's also got the correct full given name, not the non-degree or fake names that they use, and the correct sentence structure requires, say, syntax, grammar, and a full set of definitions so I know what it says. Just some conditions. Conditional. And that's the part they can't produce. If you give me an umbrella statement followed by a series of questions, I'm kind of trying to give you some examples. There's no one generic example, but I'm giving you the idea. You have to go practice this, but you'll get it after you do it for a day. You'll stumble through until it comes to you. It'll just come to you. It's natural, actually. Let's see. I will accept that I actually did what you are accusing me of if you can prove that I actually did what you say I did with a credible witness. Okay? You can say a first-hand, fact-based witness is another way to put it, too, because that's what they have to bring into court. Agree versus argue, creditor versus debtor. It's confusing because you don't want to consent to their authority, but you want to agree with them conditionally. Yeah, we all get it. You've practiced this, okay? You're not consenting to the authority when you're being a creditor. That's what you get. It's just the fact that you're there, okay? Get over it. Question is that could be part of what you're asking, right? Because I conditionally accept your offer to proceed with this traffic ticket hearing upon proof of claim that you actually have evidence, and I do mean evidence, specifically proving jurisdiction. Where's that? And they'll say, well, we have it. I said, no, sir, I didn't ask you for your opinion. I asked you for the evidence, please. That's a conditional acceptance, right? That's a offer, counteroffer. Just happened right before you. Just like that. And you're by being the creditor. They don't have jurisdiction over creditors, guys. But until you show you are one, they're going to proceed as the debtor because you're going to act like one. All right? Some comments about the conference notes. That's something there. I'll accept the charges against me if you can prove that I am a fictitious person, such as a corporation, or not a flesh and blood living being. Okay. They might say, well, what is that supposed to mean? Just be ready for the comeback to that one, because they're going to play dumb. This is what happened to me today at the arraignment. Okay, you had an arraignment. What were you in? All right. I wish I would have said I accept conditionally. Yeah, or some form of that. I accept, but can we work this out? You always say sort of that I accept, but, or well, that's okay, but you don't have to say the words I accept or conditional accept. It's just you do it by the way you phrase the sentence. Okay. Again, this is why you have to practice it for a day before you go to court next time, or you go to see the prosecutor and work something out. I tried to mention my conditional plea offer letter, which I handed in, but they still went straight to settling the case for trial. Okay, well then maybe you need to go ahead and start preparing how to do conditional acceptances during a trial. You can do it all the way through the trial. All right. Arlene, my concern is more about debt, mortgage, car, student loans, not behind. Well, you've got to correspond with those people. Work things out. Be a creditor. Let's see. All right. Let's see, David's asking. I got to get somebody else's comments. Now, like Dave says, I accept the charges against me for speeding and reckless driving if you provide proof of claim and damaged parties. Okay. Well, proof of claim or what? You might be more specific, but you'll come up with something. By the way, another way to do the acceptances is if you actually read the law, you find vagueness in the law. You say, yeah, I've brought proof of claim that the law says this, and it's clear what that means. Make it clearer. They're intentionally vague for a reason. I can plead guilty after you plead guilty also, Mr. Prosecutor. Okay. Yeah, it might be a little confrontational. Let's see. As long as you're clearer, be clear. Be reasonable. Let's see. Please clarify when you say they don't have jurisdiction over a creditor. How is this so? Please define what you mean by as creditor and how it looks within their laws. Well, I don't have a specific example of their laws. I have a specific example of biblical law and how the laws reflect that. They do it in the form of terms like failure to state a claim for which release can be granted, or did you work this outside of court first? Those kinds of things. They all have procedures. The rules of procedure do a lot of this. So it's very broad. It's built in throughout the law that if you try to work things out, you're far better off. My point is if you come in and you simply just lay down in front of them and say, I'm the debtor and I'm going to argue, you can't touch me, they're going to treat you differently. Way differently. And you won't know until you try it. Creditor is the private citizen. The debtor is the U.S. citizen who they have control over. It gets into all those issues. I'm trying to give you the simplest 30,000-foot view way to look at things and not get caught up in the minutiae of all that. It's not necessary. But aren't they subjecting you to their law, and you don't fully under their biblical references, as you say? I don't necessarily use the biblical reference, I use the principles.
All right. So since they brought up the Bible, I'm going to use this as reference. How many of you guys have actually been in the court? Okay. Those of you have actually been in the court room, how many of you guys ever had to give sworn testimony? Okay. You ever had to give sworn testimony? Does the court usually ask you to swear, or if you have to give sworn testimony up on some sort of like religious book like the Bible or something. Yeah, okay, yeah, we do. I know last time I had to give sworn testimony, quote unquote, they requested that I make a sworn statement on the Bible. Somewhere I read that if you were to take thy Lord's name in vain, you actually was creating sin. So I was conflicted. Then I accepted the fact that they were simply testing my faith. And so I was obliged to point out the fact that I affirmed, because to give sworn testimony on the Bible would be in direct conflict with the customs of Christianity. Because it's in the Bible that they say you're not supposed to give sworn testimony. You're not supposed to use thy Lord's name in vain. If the Most High is your Creator, and He is your Lord and Savior, then why am I asking you and me in that capacity? My gaze should be gaze and my nays should be nays. I affirm. Now, I don't expect everyone to say what I say, because that's just how I interpret it. But it caused a lot of interesting things to be said during that procedure. The proceeding, the pro se future, began a series of questions which later allowed myself to ask for clarity, because if this is nothing more than a mere tax issue, then there should be some sort of accounting that should be brought forth. And I think that would be the fair way to assess the true damages and make sure that all parties are made whole. Now, these particular accusations of some sort of bond offenses, the word bond does refer to some sort of commercial security component, then I must further act on the current respective credit law provisions upon where are those current transaction reports that acknowledge and substantiate their standards in the aspect of accounting. Now, again, I don't expect you to repeat what I said. I just simply have a reason for what I'm saying. Notaries, I'm simply reverberating what you guys do all the time in the aspect of making presentments and understanding that you got to know how to act in the public, and everything that's dealing with the public in the aspect of a charge and or offense is a commercial matter. And you're dealing with commerce, we're under material law. And since we're dealing with material law, notaries, then it's a very fair assessment for you to discover who truly has been injured and to what degree. There has to be some sort of accounting or statement of account that needs to be brought forth. Now, I could be wrong, but somewhere I read that these should be applicable components, because the truth is not up for debate. We can't prove anything. It's not about proof. It's about disproving those things that do not have any rationality in the aspect of accounting. Because to go to court to simply settle a dispute without doing it peacefully, you're actually committing tax fraud. And again, this is not what I want you to say. I'm just trying to explain it in a way where you will understand. So to give you some clarity, if you're going to be the creditor, then accounting should be your language. It's just like bringing two individuals that don't speak the same language into the room and trying to have an interpreter interpret what the other party is saying. You know, both parties have to have an interpreter. Let the accounting ledger be your interpreter. And so until the accounting comes into the room, we still are swinging left and the right in the dark and doing nothing. Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something.
And by asking the questions, you're not saying, I'm the debtor, I'm the defendant, by your actions. You know, maybe it's a concept that's hard to get for some people. It takes a little while. Practice it, be the day being your creditor, and watch what happens. Here's one: happy to pay the ticket if you can specify what lawful species of money I'm required to pay. See, you're not going to find a law that says that's how you can say it. It's a principle. You brought up a good point in your question. See, when you bring up the points that bring up their deficiencies, that's how you win. I've always said you beat them on their deficiencies. So when your creditor response is point out your deficiencies, you just broke jurisdiction. If they break the rules, they lose jurisdiction. That's how it's a jurisdictional question. Okay? All right. So those are all good comments. Very good. So now those who are in the queue, queue to raise your hands. I'm going to be done with this session for now. I want to go ahead and grab those who raise their hands. Hopefully you are asking, you have a success story. If you're in the queue, there's 508, Robert, Big Mo, Curtis, Danny. Hopefully you all have a success story to start off with. That's the first thing we're going to cover. Maybe you've used one of these techniques, something like this, something we've otherwise been taught. That's what you're in the queue for. So if I call on you and you don't have a success story, I'll ask you to drop out and come back. Okay? Big Mo says, looks like you're up. This is TJ, go ahead. Big Mo says on screen. You're unmuted. Okay, he probably he's maybe either silenced, muted, or maybe he just went somewhere else for a few minutes. But you lost your spot. Okay. Curtis. Curtis is the next one up. Let's hear your success story if you got one. Curtis. Go ahead. Curtis, go ahead. We hear background noise. You're unmuted. Curtis, you were up for a question. Is your mic working? Maybe your mic's not set up. So always good that you did check your settings before you get on. When I hear background noise, I know you're there. Curtis? Okay, maybe he doesn't know he has his hand raised. Well, that's it. I had a few people drop out. So if you got questions, go ahead and raise your hand. Put yourself in the queue. That uses the little microphone button, as well as the *6 on your phone. Demetrius. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, TJ. How are you? Okay.
Good.
Having a good night, dude.
Good.
As you know, I told you, I spoke to you about code enforcement, the grass cops. I was going over some material today. I got a little bit of information. Conditional acceptance, can you use that for a municipality code officer?
You can use it for ordering McDonald's.
Really?
You can use it for court. Okay. You can use it for a pullover. Isn't your basic whole argument?
My whole argument.
What? Tell me your argument as a creditor. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say we don't have a contract because.
And you just lost.
Really?
You just argued before your first sentence. You started arguing, and that's where they get you.
Okay.
Like in Jerry Maguire, you had me at hello. I got you out of the first 3 words out of your mouth.
Okay.
Let's try it again.
I would be glad to accept your offer if you can show me a contract that we both have 2 wet signatures, and you can show me a jurisdictional, maybe you have jurisdiction.
Yeah, jurisdictional nexus, a contract. Yeah.
Okay. The reason I say that because in the cities in Florida, I don't know about Washington or any other country, any other part of the country, they have charters, and I've done the research. And Steve, Orlando, which you've had in the program before, he says that in their charters, the private homes are not covered. Code can't touch you. But they won't admit it. They did admit it to me 11 months ago when the city manager was there. I had a meeting with him, and he checked with his lawyers in front of us. Me and my friend Joe was there. And we brought the issue up. He looked at the lawyer, and the lawyer shook his head. They're right. And they didn't bother me for a long time.
Yeah. So you're this is why in your case specifically, because I hear from you a lot on this grass cop situation,
Yeah.
I don't mean to be silly, but it's a good example of what we can get caught up doing. Yours is such a simple. I mean, I told you, go work it out. So that means, look, I don't want to fight you guys anymore. I turn the other cheek. Let's see what we can work out. I don't think we have an agreement, but I'll conditionally accept that your assertion that we do. Can you produce it? And if not, what can we work out? Negotiate something. If not, okay, I'm still gonna let you off the hook. I'm letting you off the hook. See, now I'm the creditor. I'm not the debtor. I'm not I'm not arguing too much. I'm just simply saying, look, apparently we don't have an agreement, but I don't want to argue with you about that. I'll accept that. Maybe my grass is a little too long. I mean, big deal. Well, what can we work out? What would you like me to do? Would you like me to get it cleaned up and then, and then just kind of leave it at that, or, pay a reasonable fine? Because I don't think we have an agreement. And then if you want to proceed where we don't have an agreement, then we'll have to change our discussion. That means like I'm going to have to sue you, right? But my point is, you keep the negotiating going. Because in your case, I don't know what you knew beforehand and what warnings they gave you, or whether they have jurisdiction or not. They probably don't, but that's unfortunately we live in a society too. Sometimes we do have to kind of help protect our neighbors too.
Well, TJ, it was every sign showed it was vindictive. Because I had a problem with somebody in another department. And when I went over to talk to her, when it was kind of late, this fine is $4,000.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Well,
But say, like, let me get this advice. Look, I don't want to fight you guys. Whatever. I'm not going to make accusations. Just pull back from that.
Yeah.
And say, look, let's be reasonable about this. I don't think you have an agreement, but I'll accept that maybe we have to do something. What would you want me to do to remedy this problem? Instead of talking about money, you're just talking about action. You've got to clean it up a little bit. See, now, there you go. Now I don't want to hear from you again.
Well, everything's been cleaned up. She wrote it up July 10th, but she added up the days. It was 62 days, and there was some areas in there that I didn't even know about. She didn't even know I had to go to court, not court, but a hearing, because she failed to tell me what needed to be cut. It was my garden. She wanted me to cut my garden back. And I think you remember me telling you she had trespassed on the property.
Yeah.
And
have other people complained?
No. That's the funny thing about it. When I went over to talk to her, she said, I just want to let you know, sir, that nobody in the neighborhood complained about your grass in the back. It was the people upstairs in the other department that told me to go after you.
Okay.
So,
like I said, my approach would be this. Go see if you can get it worked out, kind of just put it to bed. Show them you're a peaceful, not dangerous guy. Then if you feel like you've got to go to the next level, send them a bill and whatever for your expenses, because they never approved jurisdiction, then you could go for your small claims thing. But never go to war until you can get it settled first.
Well, how does the small claims? Do you have a right to take a code enforcement officer and do small claims?
I don't know. I guess I would research it, wouldn't I?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Anybody that steps on your right, maybe it's not small claims. It may not be worth going to federal court, but federal court's where you have your rights arguments.
Well, that's going to be my final resort. I don't, as I told you before, I don't really want to go into federal court, but I'm prepared for it. I know what to do.
Is it worth it? I'm going to be honest with you. It would be easier to just try to work this out, pay a small fine, and just everybody go their separate ways and say, but I don't want to hear from you again. That's part of your offer.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, but I don't want to agree on $4,000.
No, I agree, but it's going to cost you more than that to go to federal court in the end.
Oh, yeah. But
unfortunately, it's the lesser of two evils sometimes.
It is. You're right. But I'm probably, doing a small claims court, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Small claims is good as long as you can establish that you have a cause of action that's substantial for small claims. In other words, a cause of action that fits into the small claims realm of authority. Okay? You determine that by research.
Her communication is utterly ridiculous.
It's not surprising, but listen, I'm going to get you another caller.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Take action on that, okay?
Yeah.
All right, next caller is one that says, anonymous. Ooh, these mystery people.
How's it going? A few days before sometimes it goes on or something, right?
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. Yeah, it's a good call. I just want to stop anything. It's the way to go, as you know. I have a quick question. Um, in relation to really bonds, I know in one of our processes, we actually can go into court and ask for the bond as a creditor, um, and because technically it is ours when we ask for it. My question is kind of around, and that's I think geared towards the bond that the prosecutor is supposed to bond the case over, commercial energy. But my question is in regards to an appearance bond, um, in terms of, so I've been threatened, not threatened, but the defendant or the straw man or whatever you want to call it, has been warned that an appearance bond may be forfeited if he or she doesn't appear, or it doesn't appear in court. But I guess my question is around, to me, it would seem, and I've already conditionally accepted this offer with the syntax.
Okay.
It's conditional acceptance.
That's conditional acceptance. Yes, yes. Okay.
But my question is, I'm thinking that I really want bond. It, it appears, it seems.
What do you want it for? I mean, don't you just want to be out of there?
I do.
Okay, don't get too far off base. You got to work something out and just say, look, what is, you got to use the bond. Hey, the appearance bond, all that is, again, I don't know, did you pay a bond? Does that ever happen?
I didn't pay a bond.
Okay, but you probably signed a release agreement. That's also an appearance bond.
Right.
Yeah, and even if there's no fee involved, it's still an appearance bond. You're agreeing to terms and conditions. It's all contract to appear at a certain date and time, and then, if you're not in honor, they can do whatever, they rarely let them after you, and so should they. So,
yeah, to your point, I mean, yeah, it will make more sense not to go that route. I was just curious if that was something that's kind of common.
Well, you're a creative guy, I can tell. You always come up with creative ideas, and that's not bad. But sometimes you have to go for what's the path of least resistance, even if it's going to cost me more, because it's going to cost me more just to keep fighting too. There's always a cost to that, and I'm not saying everybody should give up. I'm saying give up with control. You win a football game, it might be 41-42 game. Then the team got 40 points. Oh my God! But you won.
Right.
So always remember that. It's the W you want, at least at some level. Not just the points. So.
Okay. And on that, but on those lines, on the lines of keeping it simple. So I always start any sort of type of offer with the counter offer, conditional acceptance. So
yes.
No matter what the ticket or anything, I got the ticket. So I'll syntax those, and that's my conditional acceptance, and so that all by itself is on court. But also, expressing the trust makes a lot of sense to me, especially what I've already been in court and essentially expressed the trust.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not in a super formal way, but the concepts that I've asked questions about certainly outline a lot of the things that are in express the trust. So I guess it's in your opinion, this is not legal advice, but would it be kind of counterlegal to express the trust while still having the syntax contract already settled and out there as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you're mixing stuff together, you're getting off point, and once you get off point, then you're beginning to look like a debtor again, even if you got the right idea. So I'm very careful about throwing everything at the wall. You need an arrow to kill a deer, not a shotgun. And if you got a good plan, stick to it. As long as you keep the essence of it being that, when you're expressing the trust, you're saying, "Hi, I understand. I want the court to understand this is what I'm here doing. This is how I'm appearing. These are my conditions. And as long as the court is ready to proceed, I'm here to help you get this settled. I'm here to help. You know, you're not there to fight. It's absolutely not an argument when you're doing expressing the trust. You're just pointing out the relationship of the parties. And when you're saying I'm a beneficiary, you're saying I'm a creditor. Right? You know, beneficiaries create the corpus of a trust. Trustee's job is to pay. But if you don't claim that position, they flip it on you, and you become the trustee / defendant / debtor.
Okay. I remember
That
one.
quickly.
Right. Okay. That makes sense to me. Because the thing, anyone who's ever had a syntax claim and submitted it to the court, you know, they know that they're not going to bring it up. And so,
No.
in the background, that contract being acquiesced to. So, I mean, when you have your small claims, so you can do that in the background, and not necessarily convolute the matter if you know if you want to do you know for instance express because that's probably what I end up doing.
Yeah, and this is, I can't stress enough. You got to go to your brother and try to work it out. Matthew 18 verses 15 and 16.
Yeah.
That means if you've got to go to the prosecutor and say, look, you know, I know I sent you a copy of this. I sent it to the court, and I sent you a copy so you'd know what's in the court. What is it we can do to work this out?
Right.
You're not admitting anything. You're saying, what is it we can do to work this out? Like I made some mistakes, no question about it. I'm not, I'm here to get this thing taken care of. Now, you're not admitting guilt by accepting. You're accepting the responsibility to settle it. That's a different scenario than saying I've committed a crime. You might even say, well, the facts of the case are, I don't deny that happened. The question is, what was the intent, or what was the, but what is it we can do to just work this out so we don't have to take this to court? You know, the kind of thing that's not like, a murder charge. We're trying to reduce it from a murder to a manslaughter. You're still going to jail.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I want to take responsibility for my actions, but this needs to be reasonable. So I just want to see what we can do to work this out. And he says, are you willing to admit guilt? I see there's an offer.
Right.
Now, you have to be ready for that.
Or are you representing yourself?
Well, I don't know how to do that unless I bring a mirror. That's representing myself. That's me over there in the mirror, and that's not me, and here I am. Yeah, that's representing myself.
Do you have a mirror?
Okay. I get mirror to court at all times. Yes, I am representing myself. See, look at that. That's it.
And then one last thing I just remembered, while expressing trust, one of the whole ideas of expressing trust obviously to obtain the age of majority. And it's perhaps that maybe I missed this when you've explained it in the past. When I was reading this, I was on page 9 for anyone who's maybe in the document itself, just reading it. But it talks about in order to obtain the age of majority, having the birth certificate along with attaching an affidavit attesting to attaining the age of majority with specific language.
Yeah.
I don't recall us mentioning that, but it makes sense. Even in reference to 2 weeks ago when we were talking about doing the explanatory statements with the national passport.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's not a question, but that's something that I noticed. I guess it certainly wouldn't hurt to bring a certified copy of the birth certificate along with an affidavit with this process. I think that.
Does it make sense to you? It makes sense to me.
Yeah. Okay.
You're the one telling the story. It's your contract.
That makes sense.
There's no rule that says you have or have not to, but if you read that, it makes sense. You say, you know what, this makes sense. When you make the decision, it'll usually work out. It's not when I tell you to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know how it is.
Yeah, the volition, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all I had.
You're injured. Yep. All right. Thanks. Always good. And by the way, if you do some work on that trust document, expressing trust document, you see it needs room for improvement or cleaning up or shortening or cleaning up, whatever, always be prepared. Send me a copy of what you come up with.
Okay.
I can always improve upon.
Yeah, I probably took a couple of typos, but nothing
Nothing bad. I know all that stuff's going to have typos. It's not intended for anybody to just take without retyping it. It's meant to be edited so that you own it.
Exactly. Yeah, but if I think it's some conceptual stuff, I'll definitely let you know.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate your feedback. I know you do thorough work. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Bye. If anybody on the planet needs to be proofread, it's me. But that's because I'm working on volume sometimes. All right, 508, Robert. 508, Robert. You're
Hello,
up.
TJ. How are you? Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, how are
Can you
you?
hear me?
Yes, I do.
I'm good. I'm okay. My my motion to the judgment is tomorrow morning.
What are you working on?
I
again?
I didn't pay a credit card. Moral lapse. They're laundering drug money, and then they were told to cease, and then they paid $100 million in 2018, and I don't feel as though my labor should, pay them any money, and I kind of hit the hornet's nest with my answer. So, yeah, I admitted to taking the card and all this stuff. So,
No.
and yeah, but I didn't admit that I owe money. So it's a moral law, I just don't feel like I should pay these people because, they're just laundering drug money. And they're paying $100 million to the Department of Justice, and they're just going on with what they do.
Yeah.
So,
Goes on.
So I'm a fighter. I understand what you're saying, turn the cheek, all that good stuff. But
There's a place for that. There's a place to, just say we got to work this out. Let's prove a claim. But I'm happy to pay you. Prove the claim. Prove. And credit cards are just a million things that they can't prove.
yeah, that's
and
the
maybe
thing.
about that.
I got my statement. And I'm definitely prepared. I'm going for the appeal. So I'm trying to go.
Did you get a lot of objections on the record that were ruled on?
Well, tomorrow morning is when I get my first shot at this. I wish I came to your site before I put my answer in, but I didn't. And
the answer should be, by the way, a little tip on answers to suits is you don't answer it, you motion.
Right.
That actually waives jurisdiction when you do that, and then that keeps it going.
Well, actually, I read all the motion laws, and of course in Massachusetts, they have these little rules. You got to put an SP by if you're representing yourself, or they throw out the motion.
Mm-hmm.
So when
local rules, very important.
Well, 180 pages I read, and I saw that, and they had, an exemption for commerce, and they also 7-1, the 7-1 rule I learned about from your site. They exempt that. So the guy saw my answer and he immediately put in, a judgment because I admitted to a few things, and they gave me 13 days. I put in a motion, but I know he's just going to throw it out because I didn't put the SP something after my name from not being a lawyer. So my motion was ridiculous. I tried to write some more motions, and I realized, this isn't going to go anywhere. But I do have what I'm going to say. I don't know if that's okay, if you want to hear what I'm going to say. I'm going to try and go in there, and I am here on that matter, and just do a lot of talking before they can go ahead and hear the motions. They'll throw out my motion, and then they're probably going to approve his motion that I have to make the payment.
So it's a summary.
I didn't know.
So the summary judgment. Where's the trial by jury? Where's the first jury of your peers to rule on a matter of over $20, for the Constitution?
Well, I do have at the very end. If he doesn't, there's so many. I got like 6 motions to dismiss all lined up. Okay, so so I can go to appeal. I'm expecting to go to appeal. These people are not going to bend over. So
remember, the only thing you can bring up in appeal are objections and rulings on the record. So keep that in mind.
So if I say
appeal is not a second place to hear the trial. Appeal is to hear objections and violations of process as a result of those objections only. Those are the only things you get to put in an appeal.
So every time I say I motion to dismiss and he objects, I have to say, put it on record, your objection.
Well, yeah, that's more or less. And usually when you make an objection, you say, I object. And they're going to say, why do you object? You say Rule 407B or whatever. You have to kind of have it down to because you have to show how they violated the rules. Or if the only testimony in the record is the attorney's own testimony, which will be the case, you bring up Trinity versus Pagliaro case, Supreme Court case.
The question is,
The statements by counsel are insufficient for a judgment.
can I read you what I plan to say before any of them can talk?
No, not right now, because I don't want to get into too much reading like that kind of thing. But just make sure you have a comfortable understanding of what you're trying to do. Just make sure you're trying to get to getting objections in the record. Without an objection, you won't have an appealable case. So I'm not so concerned about what you say. I'm concerned about what you do when they say. Their burden of proof is on them, not you.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get the attorney to show me his proper authority, consent to proceed. I'm trying to get him to bring in his.
I don't know how much of you use about credit letters. There's a ton of the conditions on those letters about what they should be able to have to prove a claim.
Right, 21 days to respond in writing, provide me proof of claim evidence.
Bring you the original contract. If there's a licensed attorney, providing a proof of your license, not your bar card.
Yes.
Stuff
I'm
like
trying
that.
to buy time.
Yeah, exactly. Just maybe that will buy. Put enough of those points on the record.
And if he doesn't have like the validation,
May not let you go very far with that.
they won't.
Unless you got a motion that's written, then you can kind of go through the motion and rule on it.
Let me help you out with some conditional acceptance. Okay, and this is one that I'm actually preparing for a client who got a potential dealings with the Internal Revenue Service, and I use these type of conditional acceptance to kind of show you where we are. So I'm going to leave the name out, but I'm basically saying in the statement of facts, 2008 form 1040. Let's back up. I am the recipient of the letter 3176 dated on blah blah blah, received on blah blah blah. A copy of which is enclosed. I am conditionally accepting your offer in that letter of filing a corrected return upon proof of claim that the 2008 Form 1040 individual income tax return is based upon the position identified as frivolous under IRC subsection 6702 subsection C, and the 2008 Form 1040 reflects a desire to delay or impede the administration of federal laws, and there are any defects contained within the 2008 Form 1040, and that there are any defects contained within the 2008 Form 1099 RB, original issue discount, information returned attached to the 2008 1040. All of those are what we consider conditional acceptances, and this is just an example of what you can actually use in this basis. Basically, literally said, I am a recipient of your letter 3176, put the date. I state that I am conditionally accepting your offer in that the letter of filing, in that letter of filing a corrected return upon proof of claim, that the Form 1040, the individual tax return, is based on a position identified as frivolous under IRC subsection 6702 subsection C, and that the 2008 Form 1040 reflects a desire to delay or impede the administration of federal tax law, and that there are any defects contained within the Form 1040, and that there are any defects contained within the 2008 1099 OID, original issue discount, or information returns, which were attached to the Form 1040. All of these are conditional acceptance. Plus, my favorite part is I put the person's name. If you remember, you got 30 days from the receiver's conditional acceptance to respond on a point-to-point basis via a sworn affidavit under your full commercial liability, signing under penalty of perjury that the facts contained therein are true, correct, complete, and not misleading. Mere declarations are an insufficient response. If an extension of time is needed for a proper answer, please request it in writing. Failure to respond will be deemed an agreement with this fact. and stated in the above stated affidavit, and an inability to prove your claim, thereby indicating that the tax returns in question are true, correct, and complete. Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something.
How about the attorney anti-bribery stage in the foreign registration stage? I expect that
There might be something. They probably won't push too hard to make you produce that. They will say, well, what is that supposed to mean? He's not foreign. You gotta know what you say. When everything you bring up, you gotta prove. So,
what I'm gonna, I got the Title 8 UCC, the Title 22 UC, Chapter 11, 28, Title 28.
Well, are you writing a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim? And here's the reasons. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, that should be in there.
But there is no time for me to write motions. I'm just
telling you what I would do. I can't tell you as far as the time. The response has got to be something that's going to move the court and create a record.
So I have to.
Mm-hmm. Make sure that's where you're going with it.
So have the motions written up.
Yeah, I think you'd have to have it in the record prior to the proceeding.
Yeah, they gave me 13 days to get ready for this.
Just tell them, say, I do have some additional procedural motions, I need some additional time. Go in there and do that. They can, and that will demonstrate the lack of due process. Again, I don't know what the state rules say and require, because they're going to go off that. You might say, according to the rule, blah, 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 the Massachusetts blah, 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 says I can give an additional extension of 30 days upon request. I'm hereby making that request. You got to state it like right under out of their rules.
Geez, I don't even know what to find.
Well, yeah, it's hard to answer questions for things that are happening tomorrow because you don't have much time. But I'm just telling you what you have to do to prepare to go to court. Know the rules. Use them.
Yeah, they exempted the 7-1 rule upon, so they gave me 13 days to prepare.
13 days to prepare for a suit? Well, there must be more time than that's been going on with this thing.
So, at the end, I just, Article 7, I request that I not be denied my 7th Amendment right.
Something 7. Like that. You gotta better to put it, always say things in the form of a motion. I move the court for this, I move the court for that. You don't plead, you don't, one of the people, isn't the term people use, and I never use it, but, not plead, it's,
See, the whole reason was to get a jury trial.
All right. As we continue to go through this, I'm going to hit you with some additional information. So notaries and trustees pay attention. This is entitled What Makes a Good Trustee. This is by my mentor, Sharif Ali. Remember, if you listen long enough, you definitely will learn something.
Greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, know not to control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate that. Definitely got the normal Tuesday episode. Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. This is The Vault, episode 297. What makes a good trustee? Definitely wanted to do this episode because trustees always say, what can I gauge myself against, Trust Christian? What can I gauge myself against? What are the metrics that I can utilize to measure myself as a trustee, Trust Christian? What are these metrics that, we can utilize to measure ourselves? So today we're going to talk about these metrics. And, we're going to make a little ancillary joke about the fact that we had to break out one of the manuals of, greatness here. And really just kind of go over this in this episode. So appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to the replay. Here we go. Let's talk about it. This is episode 297. What makes a good trustee? Appreciate Salt Lake City for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out Salt Lake City. This was a very requested episode because so many trustees say, what's the metrics we can measure ourselves by? How do we know if we're doing it right? How do we know if we're doing it wrong? And so we're going to go over some of the things that the trustees bring up so eloquently, so often. The first thing is, what makes a good trustee is they don't rely on their memory. They always write it down. And it's so crazy. This is one of the first principles we go over with our trustees. You can have too little minutes, but you can never have too many minutes. And so having too much information and the complete records cost you little. But having too little information could spell for disaster. And this is, something that trustees ask about a lot when they come through about the minutes. When should they do a minute? When should they not do a minute? Things of that nature. Shout out to, appreciate Memphis, Tennessee for tuning in live, listening, replay. Shout out to Memphis, Tennessee, where we have some incredible barbecue in Memphis, Tennessee. Once again, you do not rely on your memory. That's what makes a good trustee is you always write it down. You have a pen and pad. This is the mark of a good trustee. You create the minutes. We were talking to one of our mentors actually yesterday. And the mentor said, it costs you nothing to literally just go and write down a few notes about what your view is on the world that day, what your view is of the market that day, what your view is as a trustee that day. It could be 3 to 5 sentences, but that little bit allows you at the end of the week to go back and say, wow, this is what I was thinking Monday. This is what I was thinking Tuesday. This is what I was thinking Thursday. Oh, this is what I was thinking 2 weeks ago. And guess what? I'm thinking about it again. That's the mark of a good trustee. That's what makes a good trustee. Next thing. You don't operate in shoulds. They don't work. You don't operate in coulds. You don't do the shoulds and the coulds. We don't play the shoulds and the coulds game. Appreciate South Carolina for tuning in live, listening, replay. Shout out to South Carolina for tuning in live, listening, replay. There's only a few places in the world called South Carolina, and there's one in the United States, and it's called South Carolina. It's a beautiful place in the world. South Carolina is, so shout out to South Carolina. What makes a good trustee? They don't operate in what's possible. They operate in what's probable. You don't operate in shoulds and coulds. Those are past tense words. And words that have no meaning to the trustee that's diligent. To what the good trustee does. The good trustee eliminates these words like try. The good trustees are focused on their language. That's what makes a good trustee. Is their language. Their ability to utilize language. Number 3. They understand and implement the information that they receive. Now, this is a very critical step because this is where we separate the men from the boys, the women from the girls. This is the reality. This is decision-making time. There's never an easy time to make a hard decision. Once again, there's never an easy time to make a hard decision. So what makes a good trustee is you make the hard decisions. You gotta get uncomfortable. This isn't, trust Christian. Well, why do I have to be uncomfortable, trust Christian? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's think about this. If you weren't passed along trusteeship from the previous generation, you're having to learn tough-minded management of assets. Now you're looking to do the impossible, which is send assets from one generation to the next unencumbered, in the correct position. Own nothing, control everything. Understanding and implementing the information that you receive immediately. You have to be able to understand, adopt it, and implement the information that you receive. People say we're in the information age, but how many people can implement all the information that they have? That's financial worthwhile. It's never an easy time to make a hard decision. Number 4, begin to continue to improve your professional skills and understanding the administering of the trust. Let's read that again. Begin and continue your professional skills and understanding of administering the trust. That's where we are, of course. How many people are, investing in their private education? Are you more focused on, oh man, Trust Christian, I got to be in trust? Or are you focused on getting your private trustee game up? Are you coming to the private workshop for private trusteeship? To learn private trusteeship? Or are you coming because, oh man, I just need to be in trust? Is that what it is? Because there's many people that are in trust and they don't know what's going on. And then there's people that are trustees and they have to know what's going on. This is why what was passed along from one generation to the next. Because someone had to say, this is where the buck starts and this is where the buck stops. Your professional skills, of course, you got to improve. You got to go to continuing education programs. You got to go to high net worth investor conferences, forums or not, or otherwise. You have to go to these charitable foundation galas. Why not? That's what a trustee's doing. Whether it's for college, whether that's for a hospital, whether that's for a library, whether that's for a private family situation. What makes a good trustee? Is you improving your education. Now think about it. How can the trust ever outgrow the trustee? The trustee's got to be educated because the trust can never outgrow the trustee's capabilities. Carefully plan each transaction beforehand. It's much easier to do the right thing the first time than to go back and fix it later. So this is where we get people that come to the vault and they say, oh man, Trust Christian, I need to get this situation done, taken care of ASAP. Well, did you carefully plan a transaction beforehand? Because this isn't going to be ideal for you either if you're doing 11-hour transfers. It's much easier to do the right thing the first time than to go back and fix it. That goes into even doing the minutes. So of course you got to carefully plan out the transaction. How many people are going to do the minute on the front end? Oh, they're going to have to do the minute on the back end. No, every great business has to do the minute on the front end because that's how business gets done. There has to be an offer in order for there to be a buyer. Transactions have to be planned out well in advance. This is where trustees come all the time. They say, Trust Christian, please tell me the truth. Tell me when you say plan out the transactions, you're talking about the entire situation, right? What happened to you planning out your day as a trustee every day for the trust? Do you plan out every day? Do you plan out every week? Do you plan out every month? Do you plan out every quarter? Do you plan out every year? Because that's what a good trustee's doing. A good trustee has a vision for the future and has a plan to implement that right now. Here and now. But how much is this plan, this part of the implementation of what makes a good trustee forgotten? Well, of course it's going to be forgotten. Why? Because most people don't plan out their lives. So how is it going to be any different for trusteeship, going from one generation to the next? Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a trend. This isn't a fad. This is an elite category. That's who's doing this. Trusteeship is an elite category. So yes, you plan out the schedule every day.
Wow, 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 wow. Now, this may be a hard lesson for a lot of individuals to get. You know, because, see, we'll end up complaining about the elite is doing this, the elite is doing that. You know, how many of you guys actually play sports in school? How many of you guys were actually athletes? How many of you guys actually do music? Do you strive to be the worst team? Or do you strive to be the best team? Those of you that actually have competed in competitive sports. Do you strive to be the worst team? Or do you strive to be the best team? Now, I will give public school credit in at least this aspect, but I'm trying to drive home a point. You strive to be the best, the elite. Trusteeship is no different. You strive to be the elite. This information is not for everyone. Why? Because it requires being responsible. And everybody that's out there, quote unquote, in the public, are not responsible. They're not responsible adults. They don't want to be responsible. Now, they are grown as hell, but they don't want to really be responsible because they don't want to have to be held accountable. They don't want to divest themselves of ownership. They like being called the owner. You know, they own their car, they own their coat, they own their girl. You know, they want to own stuff. Well, the elite play by a rule that is control everything, own no thing. So there isn't nothing that they own. But they control everything. They control everything. This is an elite mind state. So if you don't want to control everything, but you want to own something, then you need to get back on the bench. This is not, this is the part of the script or the play where you have to wait till you've been called upon. It's not your cue. We're only cueing in those elite players, those ones that understand it's about control, not about ownership. See, your entire public education has you not being free and independent, but poor and dependent. See, by some people's standard, $250,000 a year is great money. But what if it's, let me explain this to you mathematically. Trustees, you've heard me say this. Notaries, you heard me say, and this is why what my mentor is saying is very accurate. You got to plan out your day. 365 Live plays 365 days out of the year. So, for some of my trustees, and I have some that actually are doing this, so I'm going to speak from experience. I have some students and trustees who actually request the schedule for the broadcast. And they incorporate that into their minutes. I know, without me having to call up on you and just putting you under the spotlight, who's keeping minutes and who's not. That's why I'll constantly ask questions, and I'm not saying I know the answer to it. I don't know anything. You know, keep in mind, Bezel Bay is just, I'm just the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just the messenger. You know, this is my charity. This is what I do. My job is to make sure that you can't say when it comes to our exchange that you did not know. People say a lot of things about me, but one thing they can't say is I didn't know. If anything, well, he did say that, but I didn't get a chance to, you gonna own up. You gonna own this today. You gonna own up to the fact that you was oversaturated with information and you was just like jumping from one foot to the other. I was trying to get him to tell me what he would do. It's not about what I say. It's about what you know. I ask very specific questions for a reason. Why? Because I'm in that mindset. I plan out my day. When I'm not teaching, I'm learning. So one part of the day I'm learning, and the other part of the day I'm teaching. Right. In order for me to be effective, I gotta learn in order for me to teach. So I can't go around thinking that I know it all, because I know nothing. Now, notaries, part of your being a notary is that you're supposed to be doing noting and minting. So, being a good trustee should come natural to notaries. That's why I'm further convinced that notaries will make great trustees when they understand notarial law and understand trust law. Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you'll learn. You're going to hear it today.
Every week. Next one. Once you've decided on the correct course of action, implement it. Don't procrastinate. We're going to see rule number 2, which is get rid of shoulds and could haves. No should haves, no could haves. We're focused on implementation of a course of action via a plan. Ladies and gentlemen, we already knew that asset management requires you to be a numbers cruncher, a risk analyzer. What do you think the analysts are doing on the public side? They're sharing their risk analysis. What is your risk analysis? As a trustee, you have to be able to calculate a system. This is why we have the management program. This is why we have the trustee training program. It's to train trustees into a position where they can manage with a course and a plan of action. If they're not implementing that strategy. If they are, then we share with them how there is a plan in place with trusteeship, because the contract makes the law, and so they're just being a trustee of the contract. Simple as that. Next one, number 7. You got to maintain privacy. Don't disclose any more company business than is absolute necessary. That's what a good trustee does. It's so funny because a lot of trustees, they come in, we'll drop this jewel in the public because we know people aren't talking about it in the public. So we're going to drop the jewel because we can drop the jewel. The jewel is very, very simple. On the public side, you go on the private side. Trustees sign non-disclosures with the trust that they're trustees over. Why wouldn't they? It's standard operating procedure. And for any position or any entity to want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement, you do that on any public platform when you give up your privacy. But what happens when you're in a restricted contract now? A privacy agreement.
How many notaries understand that a non-disclosure agreement is a privacy agreement? How many notaries that are doing accounting understand that you're under a privacy agreement? How many notaries and trustees know that when you have an NDA, you're excluded from revealing private information to the public? This is a huge benefit. You know why? Because debtors don't have that type of privacy. Debtors have to disclose where they been, who they been with, how long they was gone, what they took. When you're under an NDA with the trust that you're operating as a fiduciary, you get to do what all of the other elites do. Is not disclose private information. Donald Trump quote unquote, I kept trying to tell you, they're going to make him show his taxes. Yeah, good luck. I told you, good luck with that. You still ain't seen him yet. Because he's under an NDA. Everybody knows that. Except for the ones that don't want to know that. Oh my God, the IRS wants me to say this and say that. Aren't you under an NDA? Nah, I have this, I kind of had to come to Jesus with the notaries. I'll cut the mic off and we'll have a real heart. And I'll talk a little harsh to him. Like, get it together. You're under an NDA. What do you mean you're going out in the public because somebody in the public said do something? What is wrong with you? Who are you in this transaction? Who am I speaking to? Are you actually a trustee or you're a pretender trustee? What's really going on? What's really good? They said this. Who the fuck is they? They? But see, y'all don't get that kind of conversation. Same. A good trustee has an NDA with the trust that he has a fiduciary duty to. So he don't have to disclose private information in the public. Keep listening. You ain't heard nothing yet.
What makes a good trustee? That's what makes a good trustee. Somebody that knows how to maintain the privacy, because everybody doesn't even know that you're a trustee. But what makes a good trustee is they're able to have the team in place. They're able to maintain privacy for the entity, if it's a private one. Next one. Any business that deals with any currency has to file in that particular jurisdiction. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that this may be a foreign type conversation to a lot of people because obviously private trusteeship is definitely going to be very foreign. We're not going to deny that. But what makes a good trustee is knowing what jurisdiction they're in, whether they're in the public or whether they're in the private. So when we talk about this, you have to know that when you're in the public or in the private, there is a filing that's required for particular transactions, and particularly business transactions, and particularly the currency. That is the way the accounting is done, is through the currency, and that's the way transferring of energy or appreciation for energy is conveyed at this point in time. And it should be handled with the proper accounting in that particular jurisdiction. Next one. As a trustee, you are not, and we repeat, are not doing business as a sole proprietorship, a corporation, a partnership, or an association. Now this is a very critical step because so many people, they don't know how to separate themselves from the trust as a trustee sometimes. And we always say, well, asset protection comes from asset separation. And remember, you can't be something that you didn't create. So as long as you didn't create it, you're not the creator of that particular entity. And so good trustees know how to do things at arm's length distance. They know how to do things, as a adverse party. This is what we're talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, as a trustee. Making sure that, you're signing in the proper capacity. So, we're going to be opening up the questions here. Definitely wanted to bring some very potent information about what makes a good trustee. I mean, we could go through all the traditional business sense, but a lot of these things are just basic for trusteeship, and what we say is trusteeship coming from a senior trustee perspective when we talk about trusteeship. So we definitely wanted to address this today, what makes a good trustee. Keeping a schedule, having a system of accountability is very, very important. Always continuously learning, always making it a point to be educating yourself and, to get around people that are smarter than you. Very, very important. investing in your private education comes first. That's what makes a good trustee. Understanding that as long as their capacity is limited, they can't implement strategies that they don't know about because they didn't invest in the strategy. Think about it. In the private sector, you're investing in the strategy. You're investing in learning the private proprietary process. That's what you're learning. That's what you get in the private sector. Is you're learning proprietary information. But how many people are investing in their private education to get that proprietary education? Well,
Yeah, see, I want a jury trial, you know. Decide, I'm not ready to proceed. I want a jury trial. Just say that. Again, I don't know what the rules are. That's where you have to pull out a rule and show them if you're right. When you compel them to their rules, then they'll pay attention. If you just make general statements, they'll say, we don't hear that. If they don't hear it, they don't have to. That's what fiction court's all about. It's got to know the rules.
Well, I got my birth certificate, and I'm here on the special appearance and all that happening.
Yeah.
None of that's going to matter. I'm a living man.
No, because they'll just simply say that the defendant didn't appear. You're already in it now. You've got to go in there and beat them on the rules. And you can beat them on the rules, but you got to know the rules. And
Hi, this is Mike Maloney, and I've got Jeff Clark on the line with another frequently asked question. Jeff, what have you got?
I've got a very interesting one for you this time, Mike. It's a sort of a devil's advocate question, okay? I think we're going to be right about where gold and silver are headed. But, Mike, this person is asking, what would have to happen for you to realize that you're wrong about gold and silver and where they're heading?
Yeah. That's a tough question to answer. The first thing is all of the world's central banks would have to stop creating currency. Really. Now, that's not going to happen, but still that doesn't prove that I'm wrong. That proves that gold will stop doing the accounting because, eventually it'll account for whatever currency they've already created. But if they start destroying the currency that they've created, which is just bank digits that they create, they counterfeit currency into existence, they buy something with it. So to destroy currency, all they have to do is sell those assets that they immorally but legally bought, and then when they get the currency, it goes into the account of the Federal Reserve or the ECB or the BOJ, the central banks. And that account has no balance. It vanishes and it goes into that account. And so that's destroying the currency. So all they have to do is sell back all of the assets that they have accumulated, and then that currency will vanish. At that point, there's fewer units of this fiat bogus currency that they create, chasing after the same number of goods and services, and you have a price deflation, and the currency becomes more and more valuable, and therefore gold, it'll balance. So it may go up if they destroyed enough currency to go down, but this is a scenario that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, and so I'm not worried about that. I can't think of anything. I mean, entities like, a central bank like the Federal Reserve, they can create unlimited quantities of currency, trillions or quadrillions or sextillions of dollars. And, I skipped quintillions, didn't I? They can create unlimited quantities because all they have to do is type it into existence. And they can buy the entire stock market. And as they keep on buying, the stock prices continue to rise. The stocks do well. And people get fooled into, that must mean if the stock market's going up, the economy must be doing well. Well, right now the economy is doing horribly, and the stock market is going up. So this deception works for a little while. Eventually, it won't. But they can keep on driving the stock market north. It's just that there comes a point for the quantity of currency they're creating causes people to worry about the dollar being able to retain its purchasing power, and they get scared into an alternative financial asset that is considered a safe haven. And that primary one is gold, and then silver, and then cryptos after that. Cryptos are new, and they're doing extremely well. I think that they're going to continue doing extremely well. There's no guarantee on cryptos. History, it's not my personal guarantee, but history places a guarantee on gold and silver. They've never failed. They're not going to fail this time. They're going to do an accounting of this creation, of this enlargement of the fiat currency supply.
Right, and Mike, there's some great charts in your book, your original book, that shows this accounting and how it has happened throughout history, that gold and silver prices catch up and account for the excess currency that's been created. And that's really the issue. Like you're saying, it's this accounting that has to take place because history says it has taken place before, and we have this just gross negligence on the part of central bankers and politicians in the creating of currency now. And so that implies, based on history, that this accounting means gold and silver prices will have to catch up and account for all that. So I think that's the core reason why we really believe that we're going to be right about this eventually.
Well, it isn't just you and I that believe this. The world's central banks seem to believe it because most of them keep gold as one of their primary assets. It's on their balance sheets. They don't get rid of it. The Federal Reserve has had to, they've got pretty much all of the U.S. gold, which is our gold bank. It belongs to all of us. And there's $100,000 Treasury notes issued to the Federal Reserve, where the Federal Reserve can lay claim against all of our gold. And the reason is, if everything else fails, they can go back to gold. So if they stop printing currency today, they can make the dollars fully convertible back to gold. All of the physical paper dollars that exist at $20,000 an ounce. If they were to back all of the Federal Reserve created dollars, which includes the currency reserves of the bank, we're talking a price that's more than $20,000. And so that would stop. That would give the U.S. dollar ultimate confidence. Everybody would trust it. They don't like a gold system. It constrains government and the ability to do all of this deficit spending, and it constrains the world's central banks. They can't just create currency willy-nilly when it's fully convertible back into a quantity of gold. And but it's interesting that after all these years, the gold is still on the balance sheets of the banks, and it basically is. If everything else is failing, that's the thing that they believe won't fail, and that's the reason they're holding it, is because they believe what you and I believe also. And that says something. So, what will it take for me to change my mind and say that I'm wrong about gold and silver? There isn't anything. If they destroy currency and stop printing and reduce the currency supplies, what will still end up doing to the economy? If they get it below whatever the economy would be at the current price, then gold prices will fall, measured in dollars. But gold will still purchase more stuff. That's the thing. It doesn't purchase enough stuff these days. So the value of gold, they can make the price of gold fall by destroying currency. It would go down. But the prices of other things, real estate and stocks, measured in ounces of gold, will be falling. Those prices will be falling faster measured in dollars than gold, and therefore the price of those things measured in gold also. And so there isn't, that's still saying that I'm right in my thought that gold and silver are money. They're the only thing that has always been money, and they will always be money, and nothing else except for possibly some cryptos in the future. But most cryptos are going to fail. There's going to be some big winners out there, I believe, but they're different assets. Gold and silver don't rely on the internet being available or electricity being available for them to function. Cryptos do. Cryptos, though, are much more convenient when it comes to settlement when you're paying somebody on the other side of the coin.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to announce that we are offering trustee training and notary classes for all interested parties, Monday through Friday. For more details, please feel free to reach out to us at 904-490-0297. Again, that number is 904-490-0297. We can be reached from the times of 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday, and you can also reach us 12 to 4 on Saturdays. If you can't reach us there on the line, please feel free to drop us an email at B as in boy, I as in Isaac, D as in David, I as in indigo, I as in indigo, L as in Larry, B as in boy, E as in Edward, Y as in yarn at gmail.com. Again, that email is BIDZIILBEY at gmail.com. And remember, if you're interested in getting your affairs in order, you need to start by getting your mind right. Peace.
I've got no fancy car, never was no superstar. Got no Grammy trophy, got no problem if y'all approach me. Never had no Rolling Stone cover, never had no top 10 hit my brother. Got no TV show, got no Maybach, Benz and Rolls. Got no movie roles, got no platinum or gold. Got no diamond rings, watches, and all them things. Got no way of playing. What I mean is got no private jets. But I also got no regrets. Got no swag, but I got no love for some I never had.
All right. Peace and love, family. I just wanted to let everybody know that we appreciate everybody definitely riding with us in notary and actually what we would consider as accounting training. Don't go nowhere. Stay locked in because those of you that are definitely in will fit in. We're going to just beef up everything and definitely come back with some more interesting training, which is going to be civics training with trustee training. So we're going to start with civics and then we're going to go into trustee training. Remember, as long as you guys keep doing what you're doing, we're not going anywhere. So continue to stay locked in. I'm going to send the links out to those that are actually inside of our Bitrix space. So that way you can definitely stay engaged. If you're already on our call-in number, you just stay locked in because you're not going to miss a beat. Those of you that are actually on our Spreaker server, then just wait for the new link to be posted, and you can definitely jump in with you. Remember, the information that you're hearing is not for education. Let me say another way. This is not to be considered as legal advice. Each and everything you hear in this particular broadcast for educational purposes only. We do not profess to give legal advice. This information is designed for those that are already into a notary and or trustee training capacity. Anything you hear in this particular broadcast, if you feel you need legal advice, you actually go out and seek those qualified individuals for that. But here on WTETA Radio, this is designed to be educational information only. So, remember, as long as you guys keep doing what you're doing, we ain't going nowhere. So stay locked in, because we definitely going to turn up and definitely give you civics and trustee training. Keep listening.